You ever get that feeling at the grocery store checkout? You know, that little nagging suspicion that your $100 bill just disappears faster than it used to? Well, I'm here to tell you, you are not imagining things. In this Stickman Stats Explainer, we are going to peel back the label on your grocery bill and find out what's really going on.
Okay, let's take a trip back in time. Picture this. It's 1990. You've got $100 in your pocket. You head to the store, and you walk out with a shopping cart that's literally overflowing with groceries.
All right, now let's jump back to today. That exact same cart of food? Yeah, that's going to cost you almost $250. The official numbers say that's a price jump of nearly 150%. Wow.
Now, we all know about inflation, right? It's kind of the usual suspect when prices go up. But it turns out there's something else going on. Another, much more subtle force at play. A kind of hidden culprit that's secretly making you pay more for less.
This sneaky tactic, it's affecting everything from your morning cereal to your favorite bag of chips. It has a name. It's called shrinkflation, and you can think of it as an invisible thief that's been raiding your pantry. So what exactly is shrinkflation? Well, imagine a company's costs go up, for ingredients, for shipping, all that stuff. Instead of raising the price on the shelf, which they know you'll spot right away, they just quietly shrink the product inside the package. It's a really clever way to pass those costs onto you without you really noticing.
And believe me, this happens all the time. Just look at this comment from someone online. Companies get really creative with their marketing to disguise it. Suddenly, that smaller bar of soap isn't smaller. No, it's more ergonomic.
Right.
And this is not just a one-off thing. Check out this classic example with a bag of Doritos. Over the years, the bag has lost about 1/8 of an ounce. Now, I know what you're thinking, that doesn't sound like a lot, but multiply that by the millions and millions of bags they sell every year, that adds up to a literal mountain of missing chips and a huge savings for the company.
So we've seen how companies are quietly giving us less product for our money, but that's not the only story here. There's a deeper, maybe more troubling trend going on in the grocery aisle. It's something we're calling the Great Grocery Divide. Okay, first, a little bit of context. Over the past 3 decades or so, the average inflation rate has been around 2.5% per year. But as you can clearly see, it has not been a smooth ride. We've had these huge spikes, like back in 1990, and then again in 2022, and those really squeezed people's budgets. But this is where things get super interesting. When we adjust for all that inflation, so we can compare apples to apples across the decades, some of our favorite foods actually gotten cheaper. Look at this. A pound of rice or beef actually cost less in 2020 than it did back in 1990. But then other things, like potatoes and oranges, they've either kept up with inflation or even gotten a little more expensive. So what's the big takeaway here? Well, that great grocery divide is very real. It seems like processed foods have become more affordable over time, but the fresh, healthy stuff that we all need to stay healthy, that's actually becoming a bit of a luxury that not everyone can afford. And this growing divide, it brings us to a really important question. When we're actually standing there in the grocery aisle with all these economic pressures swirling around us, what actually drives our decisions? Is it our health, our wallet, or something else entirely? Well, according to a Pew Research survey, the answer is pretty clear. For a huge majority, we're talking 83% of Americans, taste is king. It's the #1 priority. Cost comes in as a strong second, and then healthiness is trailing behind in third. This really tells us something fundamental about how we shop. Even if we want to eat healthy, our taste buds and our budgets often get the final vote.
And this chart just brilliantly illustrates the real-world impact of that cost factor. A staggering 77% of lower-income adults say that rising prices make it much harder for them to eat healthy. That is a massive 23-point gap compared to upper-income adults. It shows you exactly how food inflation hits those with the tightest budgets the hardest, making that grocery divide we talked about even wider.
But hey, it is not all doom and gloom. Despite all these challenges, there's a really powerful positive trend going on. The vast majority of Americans, like 90%, still cook meals at home several times a week. And this is a big deal because research consistently shows a strong link between cooking at home and having a healthier diet overall. It's kind of our best defense against all these economic pressures.
Okay, so let's put all these pieces of the puzzle together. When you look at your grocery receipt, you're not just seeing a list of prices. You're actually seeing the outcome of a complex battle, a battle between global economics, corporate strategies, and yeah, your own personal priorities.
So, to sum it all up, your grocery bill is being pulled in different directions by at least 4 major forces. First, you've got overall inflation, just the general rise in prices. Second, that hidden tax of shrinkflation. Third, that growing price gap between healthy and processed foods. And finally, there's our own internal calculation between taste, cost, and health.
And that leaves us with one final, pretty important thought. As we try to navigate all these pressures at the grocery store, we really have to ask ourselves, when our food costs more and comes in smaller and smaller packages, what is the true price we're all paying for our long-term health and well-being?